Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to today's episode. This one will be a little bit different. And it's been a little bit hard for me to actually put this episode together. So I hope that it makes sense, but I want you to know that this one is for you. And what I mean by that is that as I'm talking, I want you to imagine that I'm talking to you because so much of what we hear in the messaging that we receive as physicians, in the algorithms and the guidelines, comes down to this sense of, well, we should all do and think the same thing. And what works for Dr. So and so should work for you. And we can't make exceptions for you because then we might have to do that for other people. There is so much that we encounter on a regular basis that is quite depersonalizing, quite dehumanizing. And I really want you to hear me today and imagine that we are sitting down to talk face to face, maybe cozied up over a cup of tea or whatever beverage you would like to imagine. And let's just imagine that we're talking to each other, human to human. And let me tell you what it is that I want for you. The healthcare systems that we work in are broken, and they're broken on so many levels. It's really hard to imagine how things are going to be fixed. And I don't consider myself to be that systems thinker. Part of me wants to say, I don't think I'm smart enough to be able to figure that out, but that isn't really very kind to myself. And I want to model that let's all stop using that kind of language, right? Let's be kind to ourselves. I am not going to be the one to fix that problem because that is not where my zone of genius is. But that doesn't mean that I don't have value and I don't have a zone of genius elsewhere. I will leave the fixing of the system to probably a lot of people who think differently than I do and who are in positions of power that I am not. What I do want to do, what I do wish to bring to you, yes, you, is the knowledge and the comfort that you are capable of change, that you can feel better without needing to wait on the people to change the healthcare systems, whether or not that is something you participate in, whether or not you are a great leader who is in those positions, whether or not you are going to be the one to advocate for that. Let's not wait, though, for those systems to be fixed. Let's not wait on the behemoth action of trying to turn the Titanic around. What I want you to know is that it's possible to feel better now. And everyone's flavor of feeling better is going to take a different recipe. But here are some main principles that I think it's really important to hold in your heart as we try and figure out the solution for you. The first thing is that the absence of pain doesn't create wellness or happiness. So we often talk about the absence of disease is not the same as good health, right? If you are in primary care, if you practice anywhere in the world of prevention, right? If you are involved with cancer screenings or ruling things out, as most of us do, we know that the absence of disease, right? A normal scan, for example, if we're doing an imaging test, does not mean that the person is well, right? If someone has pelvic pain and I order an ultrasound and the ultrasound is normal, I don't tell the person that they don't have pain, right? That is not the answer. And so similarly, when we start to work on removing some of the pain points that you experience, right? When you are doing work to make things smoother for yourself, make them easier in some way, it doesn't automatically create happiness and joy. And it's really important to understand that because sometimes we will really work on minimizing a pain point, on making something better for ourselves, thinking that if we only fix this, then we'll be happy, right? If I can only figure out this charting thing, then I'll be happy. If I, didn't have to work this many hours, then I would be happy. But we'll make that change if we can, right? And we don't find ourselves happy. We might be, experiencing a little bit of buzz or happiness for a really short period of time, but that doesn't last, and that's normal, right? We don't get to experience happiness automatically because we've taken away a pain point, right? If we've got a thorn sticking into our arm, pulling the thorn out does do something, but it doesn't automatically make that wound heal, right? That takes time and something else, and it doesn't make that skin feel wonderful, right? We've just removed a particular irritant, right? We need to think about our health and well-being in the same way, right? So yes, let's do the work to make charting less painful. Yes, let's do the work to, reduce your hours if you need to do that, and to accept that that's normal and that's okay, right? It's crazy the amount of work that we do, even when we're working part-time. But making that cut doesn't automatically make us happy. Let's be very clear on that, because otherwise we will feel that what we have done is useless and not see it as an opportunity to make other changes, right? If you cut your FTE, but you end up staying around because you feel like you have all this free time and you end up going home at the same time, that is actually not a win, right? We want to do better than that. The absence of pain is not the same as wellness or happiness. Number 2, change is uncomfortable. We have done tremendous amounts of change over the course of our lifetimes, right? We went from high school to college to maybe working a job for a while to medical school. We might have done other training along the way. We went to residency. We might have done a fellowship, right? We have done a lot of training, and training is literally changing us from one thing to another thing, right? We are going from a human being with this set of knowledge and skills to becoming a human being with this other set of knowledge and skills, right? There is a transformation that happens. And we recognize that that transformation came with discomfort, right? It was hard to learn all of that information. It was hard to then go and apply all that information and to realize that no one person can know all of the things that are possible to know about a human body or a particular organ or any number of other things, right? We drank from the fire hose and there was still plenty of water on the ground, right? There was still plenty of water that splashed all over us, right? And didn't actually get inside of us. But that change was uncomfortable, right? It came at sacrifice. We spent long hours studying when we probably would have been rather playing and spending time with friends and family. We learned to suppress our physical needs, right? As we worked really long call shifts and stood in the OR for hours and hours on end, right? Holding a retractor, right? Maybe not even able to see the surgery. Could we argue that that's probably not necessary for trainees and not really very helpful? Anyway, I won't go down that rabbit hole, but just to say that we have experienced change that is uncomfortable. And sometimes when we're on this side of it, right, when we are trying to make changes for ourselves, when we are trying to work on our habits, when we are trying to work on our self-care, when we are, making that FTE change and adjusting to a different schedule, we will often experience discomfort with that. And we can then sometimes make it mean that our decision was wrong, or that we picked something that's too hard, or, tell ourselves that this thing should have been easy. Change is uncomfortable, right? There's newness to it. There is well-worn ruts that may be from our old habits, and constantly having to think about, sort of pushing our wheels out of those ruts, if you will, right? Those default automatic pathways that are often well worn for a long period of time, right? Change is uncomfortable. It's important to recognize this and to normalize it so that, especially when we are trying to make changes that primarily benefit us, right, which is the work that I want to do with people, right, figuring out how do we make it better for ourselves, not waiting for the system to change, that change comes with discomfort. And that is okay. That is normal. There are reasons why it's uncomfortable that are universal to all humans, right? Habits are habituated, right? They are automatic. They didn't start that way, but they have become so over time. So unlearning them is uncomfortable, and learning new ones is uncomfortable. That's normal. But again, really critical to understand. The third thing that I want to talk about is, again, also normalizing that there is a reason if you've been trying to make change and you find yourself falling back into old habits, there is a reason probably that goes beyond simply that habit change, right? Again, if we've got well-worn ruts and we have a wagon going through those well-worn ruts, it is easier for us to continue to follow the ruts. The ruts are there. They are a pathway. It is uncomfortable to wiggle the wheels up and out of the ruts, right? It takes extra effort. It takes shaking the wagon, right? It takes bumping up against the walls. There are those elements there, and that's important, but there's usually also something else that's going on that is keeping us reverting back to how we were. And a lot of the times for, the people that I connect with the most, we are looking at some kind of issue that has to do with boundaries or people pleasing most of the time. Sometimes perfectionism, but really I see a lot of the boundaries and people pleasing being the primary reason why we sort of bounce back into this. So let's talk about this. Let's say that you are trying to work on staying on time, right? You've gotten some feedback from perhaps patients, perhaps from your medical assistant, perhaps from clinic leadership that they don't like it that you're running behind. And on your end that you are a well-liked physician. Your patients love you. Maybe you have an overfull panel. Maybe your patients have been waiting a really long time to get in to see you. Maybe you really pride yourself on being able to connect with people, right? There are stories that we all have about ourselves, about the worth that we have, about the value that we provide to other people that are often impacting the habits that we have. So in this scenario, right, where we have a story about ourselves, that we connect really well with people, that we spend time with them, that we really listen to them, that our patients feel, really appreciated and understood. If we have that story and we're trying to make that match with a shorter visit, a lot of the time there is a really big disconnect there. And so the logical part of us knows that we want to make this change, right? That it's important to stay on time for whatever reason. But the emotional part of us is challenging us that people won't like it, that it'll mean that we're not as good of a doctor, right? It contradicts the story that we have about ourselves in our heads. And we have to recognize that element. Otherwise, we will never resolve that conflict and we will do nothing. We will just revert. Let's talk about another example. Let's think about charting in the room, right? Which is a huge issue for many people. We might have a story that the charting is this little task that I have to do, at the end of the day at home, little pajama time hours, right? After I put the kiddos to bed, or I've spent some time with my partner, or I've crammed food in my face, kind of whatever that looks like for you. And we have a story that we don't want to inconvenience people. We don't want to be that person who's sitting in the room typing while our patient is just sitting there. that would be rude, that would be unsocial, that it would look like we're paying more attention to the computer than we are to, the human being. As long as we have that story, we will not do our charts in the room, and we will keep to this habit of charting at nighttime. This is a huge issue for many people, and we got to talk about it, right? We got to figure out, why are we so unwilling? What is the story that we have, right, that has us keep reverting to it? And a lot of the time when I drill into this with people, it comes down to, well, it'd be rude to type, during that. Well, the patients keep talking if I sit there and type. Well, I know I've got more patients waiting in the next room and I can't keep them waiting. There are so many stories, and I don't want to minimize that any of us have felt discomfort, right, when we've tried to do this, and we have met, disappointment from others. We have had patients be angry with us. We've had staff be angry with us. There are all sorts of things that go into this that are uncomfortable emotions, right? That doesn't mean that we are wrong to want to be able to learn how to get our work done at the time. But it does mean that we need to change the story. And maybe we need to change the story in little ways, right? Maybe we need to decide that I'm going to let go of that thought that it'd be rude to type in front of my patient. I'm going to let go of the thought that people can't wait for me, that people can't understand what I'm doing, that I can't have, some kind of simple phrase that I use with people to explain, I need you to pause in your story for just a moment because I want to make sure I get the details of your exam written down. Communicating with patients what we're doing, because patients really have no idea. They have no idea the burden of the documentation pieces and how much work it takes sometimes to put in simple orders. They don't know because they don't do our job. So we can bring them in, we can change the story, we can develop kind, clear language that helps to explain what we're doing. But if we don't make that work visible to them, then we will stay stuck over here where we are taking on too many problems in the room. Most of us are guilty of that, right? And we've got patients who expect us to take on as many things as they come to, even their list of 17 things, right? And we've got these documentation requirements, and most people are more freaked out that they will be audited and are tending to undercode rather than cut back on what they're doing. There's all sorts of story in there that contributes to some of these difficulties that we have. And it's really important to understand that there are reasons why you are not making progress if you are running into these challenges, right? It's not because you're incapable of learning. It's not because you're lazy. It's not any flaw in you or any incapacity. It's because there's some kind of story that you have about what's okay and what's not okay. And in order to make progress, we need to work on changing the story. I'll give another example of this. A lot of times we talk about limiting the agenda, and the immediate response from my client is, yes, but this patient has waited 6 months to get in to see me. That is a major pain point for us. We don't think it's right, but did you decide that? Did you decide to have your schedule crammed so full that people can't get in to see you for 6 months? There's not really a world where that makes sense, right? It's ridiculous what is going on in medicine. And I think we gotta just call that out. And it is not my fault or your fault that is the case. And the answer is not that we just cram in people, we'll come in early and we'll see people over lunch and we'll stay late and somehow magically make up the system. That's not the answer. But let's not blame ourselves for this problem. Let's change the story, right? Let's Be explicit of, it's not right that you had to wait 6 months to get in to see me. The system is very strapped right now. And I'm sorry, because that's very frustrating. If I had a way to make more hours in my day to be able to see more people, I would do that. I'm not able to do that. We're going to deal with what we can today. And we're not going to be able to deal with your list of 17 things. I wish we could. We can use clear language. We can be honest about the system and its shortcomings. We can still be kind and clear, but not take ownership that it is our job to cram all 17 things into the visit when we've got 20 minutes. It is not your fault if there's a 6-month wait. It's not good. It's not right. It's hard for our patients. And we can't keep carrying that weight around with us. All of these elements, right? All of these stories that we have, all of the responsibilities that we feel to make up for the shortcomings of our system are contributing to these challenges that we have when we are trying to make things better. If you and I have talked about these things, if you have shared these things with me, if you have expressed them elsewhere and I have just seen them, if I have experienced these things myself and I'm sharing my experiences with you, all of these experiences are true and real. And there's nothing wrong with you if you've also experienced these difficulties. I can share absolutely that all of these things have been a challenge for me and still are a challenge for me in different ways. But when we do this work, we will experience the discomfort of these things being new, of having to focus on removing the pain point, right? And then dealing with our lack of knowing what to do to be happy, right? When we free up time for ourselves, we very quickly will fill it with other work, right? Rather than sit down and try to figure out what is it that I actually want, right? There's discomfort in doing that. Believe me, I know that, but it's something that we got to do if we want to feel better. When we are trying to make change, we need to accept that there is discomfort with that. It's just part of the process. Nothing has gone wrong. You are not weird. You are not broken. If you are thinking, gosh, change is hard, right? Especially if you've got that people-pleasing vibe and you are trying to make a change that primarily benefits you. That feels incredibly uncomfortable, right? Because you are probably contributing to other people having dislike of that. And there's a reason why you keep reverting back that is not strictly habit, but it does have to do with some story that you got in your brain, a story that came there very authentically, very legitimately based on your experiences and how you were taught and what you saw modeled about what is okay and what is not okay. And it's time to look at that story again and to see whether or not it's helping you. We are all amazing, highly capable, hardworking, compassionate people who have been overworking for years, who know how to drive ourselves really hard, who know how to ignore our physical needs, who have been taught to squash down our emotions and often not taught how to let them come to the surface and be expressed in healthy, safe ways, right? We have seen a lot of numbing behaviors in other people. We have seen a lot of anger and, yelling and nastiness back and forth, which is not the healthy expression of emotions. Sure, let's be angry when we're angry, but when somebody is constantly lashing out at other people and always judgmental, right? You can bet that their internal landscape is way harder on themselves than they are on other people. And that is not okay. That is not a healthy expression of emotion. That is not somebody who is living a balanced life. What I want for you is to realize that these elements are a part of healing, and they're not the part that feels good, but they are doable. You are capable of leaning into this, and you are absolutely worthy of having help with all of these discomforts. You don't have to do this alone, nor do I want you to think that you should do it alone. Whether that is finding a friend or a group of friends with whom you can be very authentic and express what you're feeling, be heard, be seen, be validated, and get back the compassion and support that you need, whether that is hiring a therapist or a coach to whom you can spill out all the thoughts and feelings that you're having and see your validation sort of come back to you, right? To be told, no, you're not crazy for thinking and feeling these things. You're just a human with a lot of thoughts and feelings, and maybe you need some help in sort of sorting out those things, right? Because sorting through our thoughts and feelings has not been something that's been emphasized in part of our training, and it's absolutely been squashed down. So many of us need support, right? So whether that's somebody in your life that you can turn to and again, be vulnerable and authentic with, or whether that's getting hired help, somebody who is trained to sit with you and hold space for you and validate and discuss these difficult things, you are 100% worthy of having that kind of support. And I imagine that you've encountered times when you've not felt like you were worthy of having that help and support, and I'm here to tell you that you are. My friends, I want so much for you to be able to see that you are not responsible for a broken system. You are not responsible for creating it. None of us are. You are not responsible for making up for it because none of us can. You are responsible and can step forward and start to really take care of yourself. See yourself as someone who wants to continue to operate in the system if you choose to stay in medicine, but to do so with a different intention, to do so with the intention of taking care of yourself and recognizing that we are functioning in a broken system. And that means that we need to set boundaries and limits, and that we don't condone. We don't condone what is happening in the system. We don't condone that we are facing tremendous staffing shortages and sometimes supply shortages, and that we are being asked to do more and more and more all the time with less and less resources, that we have had payments cut, that we are asked to document more, that we are asked to take on more responsibilities because we are understaffed, and can't you just do this thing? And patients, meanwhile, are frustrated, right? Because they're not getting their 17 items. We cannot accept responsibility for all of that. We cannot fix that. What we can do is learn how to speak kindly and clearly and let people know we wish we could do more, but we're just not able to do so. What I want for you is to find healing. What I want for you is to get the help that you deserve. What I want for you is to learn how to take care of your body and your mind and heal burnout if that's where you are. Heal that cynicism that you don't like, right? That you feel some judgment towards. That is a totally normal part of burnout. To not be feeling emotionally exhausted if that's you. To look back on the last several years and probably even before that, right? Even before the pandemic, and see just how much you have been through. And to tell yourself, it makes sense that I feel this way. It makes sense if I'm exhausted. It makes sense if I'm frustrated and overwhelmed. It makes sense that I have pushed myself harder and harder and harder all the time, feeling like I need to make up for the shortcomings of the system. It makes sense. No one told you otherwise. And it's not too late to change. So if you're listening and you are someone that I interact with in real life, this one's for you. You have been through so much. You are capable of amazing things, and you do amazing things that you can't even see all the time. And it's okay to take care of you. It's okay to put down some of these burdens of feeling like you're the only one who can take care of all of the things. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay if you're not okay. It's okay to take time off. It's okay to leave a toxic work environment. It's okay to say no. It's okay if people think that you're not a team player because you don't agree to go to all the lunch meetings, right? When you don't really have a lunch break anyway. It's okay to take a nap. There's lots of things that are okay. And I want you to see that. But that's uncomfortable. My friends, start the healing. Know that I see you. Know that we're all in this together. But part of what we need to do to change the system is to decide that we're not going to be quiet anymore, that we're not just going to be complicit, that we will not only speak up and advocate for what needs to change, but we are also going to take the radical action of choosing to see ourselves as humans and to take care of ourselves, our bodies, our minds, our souls. I hope that this resonates. I hope that you have a wonderful week. I hope that you'll reach out if you're feeling like you need some support around this. And I hope for all of us that we will really lean into getting what we need in order to feel better, in order to decide whether or not we're going to continue to be in the system, but to be in the system in a different way, to be in the system in a boundaried, self-compassionate way that actually enhances our ability to take care of the other humans. Goodbye for now, and until next time.